Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. Back with some more vibe for all you. Yes, and this one is called 3,000 Years Ethiopia's History Explained in Less Than 10 Minutes. I don't think I've done this one yet. I've done a couple on Ethiopia, but not this one. So maybe this is a more compact, comprehensive history here that I could get. Because, especially coming from an area where Rastafari is bigger thing, and Rastafarians believe that repatriation to Ethiopia is a must, like they would say, you know what I mean? I've always been interested in Ethiopia. One of my first friends when I came here, at the college I went to, was an Ethiopian dude named Yoti Panyoti, I think was his name. He had some stories to tell me, so I learned a lot from the brethren. But let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer and see what this year is all about.
Ethiopia, home to more than 100 million people, the original home of the coffee bean, seat of the African Union, and a nation whose roots stretch back into ancient times. Ethiopia has been heavily settled, going far back into prehistory. Da'amet is the earliest known kingdom in this region, and was a contemporary of ancient Egypt and Nubia to the north. On the opposite side of the Red Sea, facing Da'amet, was the kingdom of Saba in modern-day Yemen.
So this Nubia I keep seeing here, I mean, I've heard of it. I wonder if that's where the Nubian queen come from that was so popular in the 80s with the rap people, Everybody wants to be a Nubian queen, I wonder if that's where that came from, around that region there.
These kingdoms appear to have had close ties, and some even theorize that they may have formed a single kingdom. According to Ethiopian tradition, this was the home of the legendary Queen of Sheba. She converted to the faith of Solomon of Israel, and bore his child, who returned to Ethiopia to rule as king, beginning a long line of Ethiopian kings who claim direct descent from King Solomon. The Ethiopian Church today maintains the Ark of the Covenant was brought to this ancient kingdom during this period, and is being kept safely there under guard for more than 2,500 years. For unknown reasons, Da'amat gradually eroded into several city-states and successor kingdoms around 400 BC. One of these, Axum, would evolve into the first well-documented great power to rise in Ethiopia, and was able to unite the northern Ethiopian highlands beginning around the 1st century BC, where they established bases on the Ethiopian plateau and from there expanded. By the 1st century AD, they became a major player on the commercial route between the Roman Empire and ancient India, a notable Persian religious figure.
I'm telling you, man. Here's the Roman Empire again, all through there, We haven't changed that much. The technologies have changed, but, governing so much haven't changed. What new you going to do? You know what I mean? Right now, at this point in time, the new thing to do is to try to bring peace to everybody, and everybody try to get along. Because we've been fighting forever. I've been on this earth for a few decades now, and we've been fighting forever. Of course, we were fighting before I was born, but it's like we'll never learn. But, look at that. Everybody was trading with everybody. I mean, we're talking about Ethiopia, and here comes the Romans, and, Solomon coming back to rule, and, because he married Sheba, and they were just moving around and doing their thing there.
And scholar of the time, regarded Axum as one of the 4 great powers of his day, alongside Persia, Rome, and China. To facilitate this booming trade, the Axumite kings minted large amounts of gold currency that became widely used and have been found throughout the Mediterranean to India. Around 325 AD, the king Ezana converted to Christianity, making it the state religion, and was also the first state to ever use the image of the cross on its coins. Ezana campaigned against the kingdom of Kush to the north, as far as the borders of the Roman province of Egypt, and is believed to have been the reason for that 1,000-year-old kingdom's collapse. Included in his many titles were King of Kings, King of Saba, King of Salhen, and King of Himyar, which are all in
king of everything,
Yemen, indicating that he either controlled or annexed these kingdoms, or perhaps they were merely tributaries. The kingdom of Axum would reach its apogee during the reign of King Caleb, who invaded the Arabian Peninsula in 520, with a vast army against the Jewish king Yusuf of Himyar, who had been persecuting the kingdom's Christian population. 5 years after installing a native Christian viceroy, one of his own Axumite generals killed the viceroy and declared himself king of Himyar. This general turned king, Abraha of Himyar, is mentioned in the Quran for his failed invasion of Mecca in the year 570. The rise of the Arab Empire would signal the decline and eventual demise of
people were just invading people back then.
Axum was completely cut off from any contact with the Christian Roman Empire and the vast revenues generated from Roman trade. The kingdom of Axum had a slow decline and began to contract back into the highlands. The kingdom of Alodia formed on its northern border and converted to Coptic Christianity and spoke a Nubian dialect, in contrast to Axum's Semitic dialect and script, used since the days of Da'amat in the 9th century BC. According to Ethiopian tradition, around the year 1000, a female pagan warlord overthrew the kingdom of Axum, laying waste to the land, burning ancient churches to the ground, and hunting down all members of the royal family of Axum.
A female.
The last of her dynasty, which ruled over a much diminished kingdom, was overthrown by Maratakla Haymanot in 1137, establishing the Zegwe dynasty. Although some scholars believe this dynasty...
It's quite possible that they didn't have voting and all of that stuff going on back then. I guess they didn't. So, people within the countries just take power. It's kind of like how Africa was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And South America in the 80s, where people would just take power. Bam, I'm the leader. Bam, I'm the leader.
Dynasty was established earlier. The most famous ruler of Zegwe dynasty was Gebre Lalibela, who constructed 11 churches, carved straight from a single piece of stone, and attempted to construct a new Jerusalem as his new capital in response to the capture of the Old Jerusalem by the Muslims in 1187. Despite the piousness of the Zegwe, they had one thing working against them in the eyes of many of their subjects. They did not claim direct descent from the biblical King Solomon, and around the year 1270 they were overthrown by a dynasty that did claim Solomonic descent. This Solomonic line of kings ruled Ethiopia for more than 700 years, with a brief interruption during the 14-year Abyssinian Adal War, in which the Adal Sultanate was able to annex Ethiopian...
How did they know they were direct descendants? Because quite frankly, Rastas in Jamaica, which is pretty much on the other side of the world, is also claiming to be these direct descendants of him. So I guess somebody could come claim something and you know, I don't know. That's an interesting thought there though. Because the one that didn't claim him died off, but the ones that claimed Solomon, a direct descendant of Solomon, they lived on. And they're still living on to these days, to the point where other countries are now saying, hey, we're part of you, you know, we're direct descendants of too.
In Abyssinia, with Ottoman help, only to be beaten back to their original borders by the Ethiopians with Portuguese assistance. The Age of Princes was a period in Ethiopian history from 1769 till 1855, when the country was de facto divided within itself into several regions, with no effective central authority. It was a period which the emperors from the Solomonic dynasty were reduced to little more than figureheads, confined to the capital city of Gondar, and local warlords fought each other for supremacy. This came to an end with the reign of Tewodros II, who re-established his dynasty's authority over the nation. However, this respite was short-lived, and he would commit suicide instead of being taken prisoner by a British expedition. The British would sack the Ethiopian capital and carry the Solomonic dynasty's crowns and treasure they had accumulated over the centuries back to Britain. Ethiopia's troubles were not over.
How come they didn't take the covenant?
In 1874, the Ottoman-backed Ismail Pasha of Egypt invaded Ethiopia with the goal of creating an empire that would include the entire length of the Nile River. His sizable army included a large number of recruited American and European officers. The Ethiopians had been working hard on organizing and modernizing their military since their experience against the British, and were able to utterly defeat the Egyptians in 2 decisive battles. The Ethiopian Emperor Yohannes would die in battle against a Sudanese raiding force 13 years after defeating the Egyptians. His successor, Menelik II, would expand the Ethiopian Empire and defeat a full-scale Italian invasion. The technologically superior Italians were decisively defeated in a bloody war that they expected to be a casual affair. 40 years later, masterminded by the Italian journalist turned dictator Benito Mussolini, the Italians invaded again, this time sending an overwhelming force of approximately 500,000 men, 600 aircraft, and 800 tanks. Despite this, the war was still a long and bloody affair. The Italians gained little from the annexation and committed widespread atrocities against the Ethiopian population, which they never fully managed to control.
See, I put something up here on Ethiopia, and there's a lot of debate as to whether or not Ethiopia was colonized. It was annexed, not colonized. Colonization is what happened in Grenada. The British came in and they never left, pretty much. The Queen stuff is still there. You know what I mean? So the Italians came, they were there for 5 years, I do believe, and then they were gone. So it was like an annexation more than it was a colonization, because though some of the traditions of the Italians probably stayed there a little bit, it's not prevalent per se, from what I could see. You know what I mean?
Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie returned to Ethiopia from exile in England to help rally the resistance. The British began their own invasion in January 1941 with the help of Ethiopian freedom fighters. The last of the organized Italian resistance in Italian East Africa surrendered in 1941, ending the Italian rule. The Solomonic monarchy was fully restored after the war. In the decades that followed, Haile Selassie would begin to slowly implement democratic reforms in the nation. However, many blamed his grasp on power for the slow pace of modernization. During the Cold War, Selassie received the backing from the United States, and when widespread drought and famine hit the nation in 1974, the aged monarch was overthrown by a socialist faction in the military. They viewed Selassie as an agent of the corrupt capitalist West, and united with Eritrea, forming a larger chaotic state that was plagued by infighting and disastrously planned and implemented socialist policies. Eventually, Mengistu Haile Mariam,
my friend Yoti told me some stories about that battle.
And attempted the creation of a state following the Soviet model, famines and genocide included. In 1991, as rebels closed in on the capital of Addis Ababa, he fled and was granted asylum in Zimbabwe as an official guest of Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, where he still resides today at the age of 80, despite calls for his extradition. This was followed by a transitional government in Ethiopia, which drafted a new constitution allowing any of the nation's ethnic regions to secede if they ever wanted to. Eritrea did so right away, and the remainder is the modern nation-state of Ethiopia. This has been Epimetheus. Huge thanks to all my awesome patrons over on Patreon who helped me with this channel's expenses and my fantastic...
Yes, that was nice. Oh, I enjoyed this one. I always wanted to learn more about Ethiopia. Yeah, no, I'm going to be doing something too. I'm going to be branching into the history of cities, like, famous cities, even just regions, like mountain regions and places, the history of it, how they keep it up. Because where I live here, I live in Appalachia is what they call this area here, and there's a lot of old historical stuff here. You could still hear old people telling old, tales of stuff that happened back in the day here and things like that. Whereas you can get that anywhere in the world, but you know what I mean? I'm talking about the region and the stories that would come from. It would be unique to this region. But, hey, I'll leave a link in the description for this. You all go check out this channel, see what they have to offer, see what go on over there. But before you do that, keep watching my stuff. Click on the playlist bubble up here, go click. Go there and binge, people. Thank you all for being here, watching this with me and ting. I always love to have my family come over. Next time I'm going to have drink and I'm going to have a little snack. So you guys could have it too while you watch the vibe with me. Take care of each other, all right? Cool runnings.